Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host. And this is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. Well, this time it's not exactly comics, but it's got some comics in it, and it's comics related and stuff. Okay, so if you have listened to my channel for any length of time, you know that I am a big Tarzan fan. In fact, I've said several times that Edgar Rice Burroughs is my favorite author, and Tarzan of the Apes is my favorite novel. And I like all of them. And I've read all of the Burroughs Tarzan novels, with a single exception, because it's apparently so rare. And so this time I want to take a look at Tarzan, the Lost Adventure. Now, I think it was 1912 when Burroughs first published Tarzan of the Apes, and it was a big hit. And it was only just a few years later, I think it was 1918, when they had the first Tarzan movie. And then he wrote Tarzan novels for the rest of his life, amongst a whole bunch of others. And of course, Burroughs passed away in 1950. And that was the end of his Tarzan production. Well, not quite. Turns out in 1995 or so, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated hired Joe Lansdale to work on a Tarzan novel, which had been started by Burroughs, but he died before it could be finished. And that was just, we don't know whatever title he may have had for it, but it is only known as Tarzan, the Lost Adventure. In 1995, Joe Lansdale finished it. He worked, whether it was a fragment or an outline or both, I don't know. But then Joe Lansdale completed that story. And at the time, Dark Horse Comics had the license for Tarzan comics, and so they got together and they wanted. Now, the Tarzan books were originally, I think almost all of them were originally published in pulp magazines, and so they kind of wanted to recreate that. So what they did is the initial publication of Tarzan the Lost Adventure was done in a magazine format, serialized, just like they had been before. In 4 issues. This is issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, and issue 4. And they was done very much like the old pulp magazines. And here it has this. Each issue had a beautiful color illustration, produced by what's his name, Arthur Suydam. I guess that's how you pronounce his name. You can see, these are just some great watercolor paintings. It actually look kind of like watercolor dyes. Some beautiful work on these. And then each issue was also illustrated on the interior, each issue by a different artist. Issue 1 had interior art by Charles Vess. Oh, this is 2. They're not even in order. I thought I had them in order. Yeah, here we go. This is the first one. Issue 1 was by illustrated by Thomas Yeats, who has also had done a lot of other Tarzan illustration, including the comic strip. Since then, so look at this. It's a beautiful interior artwork. And issue 2 now was done by Charles Vess, and you can see some of his lovely artwork. And there, because all of these artists have art style that is very similar to the illustrations of the pulp magazines. And issue 3 was illustrated by Gary Gianni. Oh, he's really good. And they're all just magnificent. And they all bear strong resemblance to the art styles of the pulp magazines, as I said. And here's the last one. Was illustrated by Mike Kaluta, and he had actually done not Tarzan, but for DC Comics, he had drawn the Carson of Venus backup story that had been in Korok, Son of Tarzan, and they're all just beautiful artwork. Then they also had articles inside as well. Oh, look at that one. Articles inside as well. After the story, like this one has a Tarzan chronology. I just use that as an example. I had some about the other things, and then to really tie it to comics, in the back of each of these had a comic strip, several pages of a comic strip. And what comic strip might this be, you ask? It was the comics reprinting, to my knowledge, the only time this comic strip has been reprinted. If it has been reprinted elsewhere, I don't know about it. I haven't seen it or heard anything of it. Is the John Carter of Mars comic strip, which did not last very long. And another, and some really lovely, you can see, beautiful artwork in its own right. And these were drawn, and whether he actually wrote them or Burroughs himself wrote it, or they were just adaptations, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've read this adaptation from the novel. But it was drawn by John Coleman Burroughs. Yes, Edgar Rice Burroughs' son. And here's the thing about the John Carter of Mars. And I haven't read this. I don't remember anything about the story, the Lost Adventure. I haven't read it since it was first published in this form. And then just a couple years later, and my nose is really itching on me. It was repackaged and printed in paperback. And this is from Del Rey. And so you can actually see how long the book is, which is about 230-some pages, 250 pages, thereabouts. Tarzan, The Lost Adventures, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and Joe R. Lansdale. And I have to say, this is a horrible, horrible cover design. Now, the type, the print is quite interesting. I like that. But this, for a cover illustration for a Tarzan novel, sucks. I mean, the type of artwork and artwork itself is not bad. It's just bad for a Tarzan. It does not go with Tarzan. Especially since there is such a long tradition of magnificent painted covers for Edgar Rice Burroughs, and especially Tarzan novels. And especially since they already had a whole bunch of great cover illustrations they could have used, any one of which would have been vastly superior to this. They could even have reused something from that Frank Frazetta or Boris Vallejo had painted before. Now, but the interesting thing is, in this paperback version, they included all of the illustrations that appeared in the magazine form. Yeah. So that is some really wonderful stuff. And that is the very last Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. He wrote 24 novels, one juvenile novel, Tarzan and the Tarzan Twins, and then this one. So this makes number 25 by Burroughs. Yeah. So now, now you see that. And looking through that made me think about what other Tarzan novels, books, have been written by people other than Edgar Rice Burroughs himself. And there have been some. Of course, not counting the comics or the or the big little books or anything like that. Now, to my knowledge, the first non-Burroughs Tarzan novel, to my knowledge, I haven't seen or heard anything before this by anyone else as an actual novel, is this book right here. And I've shown this one before. This is Tarzan and the Lost Safari, and it gives no author, just credits Edgar Rice Burroughs. So is some author hired by the publisher, and whether there's any connection to Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated or not, I don't know. This was an adaptation of the Gordon Scott movie Tarzan and the Lost Safari, which was a really good book and a really good movie and a good book. And to my knowledge, as far as I understand, it was the first one that was shot on location in Africa. And it was very good. But there's some differences. I think the novel really fleshed out the story quite a bit. There are some really great action scenes in the book that are not in the movie. And so, but one of the interesting things is that in the movie, Tarzan was still. I think it was the last movie in which he spoke me Tarzan, you Jane type. But in the book, he is entirely articulate, just like he's supposed to be. And this is from 1957. And then, in the mid-60s, 1966, 65 and 66, there was a publisher who apparently, this was it Golden Harvest? I just looked at it a little bit ago, and of course it doesn't say. What is it? Gold Star, not Gold Harvest, Gold Star. Publisher apparently thought that Tarzan was in the public domain, and they started a series of Tarzan novels of their own, and there were a total of 5 or 6. I have 3 of them. These were unauthorized, and then I guess when Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated sued them and put a halt to it. But what would be really interesting is that now, almost 60 years later, if Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated got all these and packaged them in 1 or 2 volumes, all of them, and sold as published them themselves, not as, I mean, because there are a lot of Tarzan fans who would love to read these books but don't have access to them because they were never republished, and they're just in probably relatively small print runs. And these are Tarzan and the Winged Invaders, Tarzan and the Abominable Snowman, and Tarzan and the Silver Globe. And these were written by, what did he say his name was? Barton Werper. And I don't know anything about him, and I don't really care. But I have three copies. And then in 1970, '67, I believe it was, '66. This book was published. This is Tarzan and the Valley of Gold by Fritz Leiber. Fritz Leiber was an established science fiction and fantasy author, and one of the is that right? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's an established author, and I think he approached the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, or vice versa. I don't know which. I've forgotten. It mentions it in here, and he adapted the script to, I think, was the last of the Mike Henry Tarzan movies, just prior to the Ronnie Lee Tarzan TV series, 66, 67. I might have the years off by 1 or 2 years in there, and he did a novelization of this one, but this was in conjunction with Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. So much so, in fact, that when this was published, it was called Tarzan number 25 by the authorized publisher of the Tarzan novels. And again, this is so much more fleshed out. There's so much more in here than was in the movie, and I like the movie. I like the Mike Henry movies. And again, had a good cover painting, even though it's a recycle from one of the other Tarzan novels. Okay, then we got, in 1969, science fiction fantasy author Philip Jose Farmer wrote this book. This is a 1980 copy, A Feast Unknown, but it's not exactly Tarzan. It's supposed to be Tarzan, but for obvious reasons he couldn't use the name Tarzan, and so the Tarzan character is Lord Grandreth, not Lord Greystoke, and someone else is in here is Doc Savage, or in this case, it's Doc Caliban. Doc Caliban. And so it's basically Tarzan and Doc Savage together, where they come together, have a conflict, and then work together to overcome some plot. It's been probably 40 years since I've read this, so I don't remember. And and again, is a good issue. So this is what's called a pastiche. Of course, there have been pastiches of Tarzan stuff for decades. Well, since the very beginning, and some could call even Tarzan a pastiche of the Jungle Book. But most of those are original characters that are like Tarzan, but not Tarzan, not intended to be Tarzan. These are intended to be Tarzan under a different name. It's Philip Jose Farmer, A Feast Unknown. Then a year later, he wrote this book, which is 2 novels in one, Lord of the Trees and The Mad Goblin. This is a reprint. When it was originally published, I used to have a copy of the original, and I wish I still had it. Maybe I do. I don't know. I don't think I do, though. It was a flip book. It is on one side you had Lord of the Trees. You flipped it over like this and read from the other direction, and you had the Mad Goblin. But these books have to be printed together, because together they make one story. They are 2 adventures. In Lord of the Trees, it's an adventure of Tarzan, Lord Grandreth, and he has a series of events, an adventure going on, and at the same time, and on the other side, in the Mad Goblin, is Doc Caliban is having an adventure, and they going at the same time in parallel, and the 2 stories meet in the middle. They are both the same story. One from Lord Grandreth's perspective, and the other one is from Doc Caliban's perspective. And it's a fun book, and it's being a Tarzan fan. And Philip Jose Farmer did that. Then a year or so later, he wrote this, Tarzan Alive, and this is a biography, calling information from all the Burroughs novels, wrote a biography of Lord Greystoke, Tarzan of the Apes, and as if he were a real person, and updated stuff and said what things that were, some of the details that Burroughs had written about. It's as if he was a real person, and all this stuff, all of his adventures were from the books were true, and that Burroughs just wrote his stories. Okay, and he also did the same thing with Doc Savage. Wrote it's Doc Savage, His Apocalyptic Life, and it's done just the same way. Still Philip Jose Farmer. Then he wrote this novel, which is The Adventures of the Peerless Peer. And this is a story, and I think they actually use the name Greystoke, but don't ever call him Tarzan. I'm not positive. It's been many years since I've read it. This is a Tarzan meets Sherlock Holmes story. Yep, and I don't remember anything about the plot. I love that cover painting. It's a great cover painting. Now, while I'm talking about Philip Jose Farmer, he wrote an actual Tarzan novel. It was about 20 years or so ago, and I have a copy, but I have not been able to find it. I don't know where it is. And it is called Tarzan and the Dark Heart of Time, and that is authorized by the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. And it is a fun book. I don't remember the storyline. All I remember is the Nandy Bear. But I don't know that. I just remember what that is. Okay. Then it was a long dry spell. Then in 1996 there was this book. This is Tarzan the Epic Adventures, written by R.A. Salvador. And this is a novelization of the pilot movie for the 1996 Tarzan the Epic Adventures TV series. It was a syndicated TV series, ran for one season, starring Joe Lara. This is kind of neat because it's embossed, so that you run your fingers across the figure and you can feel it. And actor Joe Lara died just about 3 years or so ago. He and his wife died in a plane crash, and he was 58 at the time, so he's a little bit younger than me. And besides that TV series, he had starred in one other Tarzan movie. It was a Tarzan TV movie pilot, but didn't take it. And it was Tarzan, basically Tarzan in New York. And it was the same producers who produced this series. Then just about a year or so later, produced a different Tarzan series. But it did better, and it wasn't nearly as good, nearly as well written. Overall, that's the one that had the blonde Tarzan starring Wolf Larson, and each episode was only half hour long. This series was more magic and fantasy, and drew a lot more from the Tarzan books. And in fact, this story here was part The Return of Tarzan and part Tarzan at the Earth's Core. Now we get up to contemporary times, and I've got this book here, which is Tarzan: The Battle for Pellucidar by Winscott Eckert. I don't know anything about Eckert, but one of the interesting things about this is it's starting in 2015, I think it was. Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated started hiring artists and writers to produce new Tarzan and other Edgar Rice Burroughs characters in new adventures and novels. So there's new Tarzan novels, and some of them are crossovers, I think. Some John Carter novels, and some Carson of Venus novels. I don't know what all else. And so I don't know anything about the story in this because I haven't read this yet. And I have one other that is Jane, the Woman Who Loved Tarzan, who, from what I understand, is also endorsed by Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. Might be published by them. I'm not sure how they're doing. And yes, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated is now, as far as I know, basically the only place you can get the new uh, uh, books of not just the new adventures, but new copies of the Edgar Rice Burroughs novels. It shows here in the back. Well, here has a list of all of his books. No, not too far. Yeah, here's a list of all of the Burroughs novels. Going through that, and I discovered. See, I've read most of them. I haven't read all of the Venus series, and nor have I read all of the Pellucidar series. I read all the almost everything else, and then I found some here under other tales that said the Man Eater. I've never heard of that one. And over here is Marcia of the Doorstep, and you Lucky Girl, and Forgotten Tales of Love and Murder, and I've never heard of any of those either. So I haven't read any of them. But otherwise, I've got and have read all of the Tarzan novels, for example, except for Tarzan and the Tarzan twins, which because that's really rare and hard to come by. And then in the back, it's got some more information here. Just think about Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated, and you can find it. If you're a Burroughs fan and Tarzan fan, you can go to Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated and order these books. Here, they even have, I'm thinking of getting these here in the future, action figures. Cool, huh? Action figures. And hey, this is no sponsorship. Action figures. And you can, I guess you can find his bossfightshop.com, and may be able to order them directly from Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. I don't know. Has some other their fandom, their quarterly magazine, and some more works for Carson of Venus, including a graphic novel that has been considered canon, and more Carson of Venus, the universe, yeah, all kinds of other stuff. The library, and from what I understand, the library, the Tarzan novels are all have Joe Jusko painted covers, from what I understand, from the classic Burroughs books. Here is listing all of their new books, at least to this point. We got Return to Paul Eldon. I'll want that one, especially the Greystoke Legacy Under Siege. Said Tarzan and the Revolution, and Tarzan, Conqueror of Mars. So that's going to be definitely a crossover with John Carter, and some other stuff. And you can even get a what do you call a sculpture here, and all kinds of other things. Some, including the Joe Jusko book, which I have, and I plan on covering sometime. Playing cards, and even talk about some of the comics related stuff that has been produced in recent years. And I've got one that's as a graphic novel of The Land That Time Forgot. So if you are an Edgar Rice Burroughs fan, Tarzan fan, and you want some new stuff, go to Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated and you can get it. You may be able to get some. I don't know if all of Burroughs stuff is in print from them, but that's so. That is what I've got for you this time, and I've blabbed way too long about Tarzan. And if you're a Tarzan fan and you like my stuff, go take a look. I've got that one on the comic book adaptations of Tarzan of the Apes and Tarzan, the Jungle Tales of Tarzan, as well as showing stuff about a bunch of my old Tarzan comics from my collection. So thank you for joining me. And please like, share, and subscribe. And do leave a comment. Which is your favorite Edgar Rice Burroughs and or Tarzan novels? Have you ordered any stuff from Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, comics are art.